to my surprise and to the surprise of the Justice Center and everybody involved, they called me and said, look, we can't handle Antifa. They're too violent. We've gotten threats. We don't know what to do. So we think it is the best idea to just cancel it. The executive itself made this decision, and they just outright canceled it.
This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, and we got a great show lined up for you today, guys, so let's just jump right into it. Joining me on the line right now is Angelo Isidorou. He is the executive director of the Free Speech Club. This is the largest free speech organization in all of Canada. I've been to a number of their events. They're really, really well put on. And recently, Angelo wanted to put on an event with Andy Ngo. Now, this is a journalist who recently was attacked by Antifa. You guys may remember from some of these photos you see here, he was left rather bloodied and bruised because they threw milkshakes at him with cement in it. And Andy has since been going around giving talks about Antifa violence. So Angelo invited him to speak at the University of British Columbia, and wouldn't you know it, Antifa objected to this. They contacted the university, they asked that he be removed, and they obliged, and they actually canceled the event. This prompted Angelo to go ahead and sue the University of British Columbia, which is absolutely huge. So Angelo, I want to get into the specifics of that and this massive free speech versus UBC case. But before we get into that, maybe you could talk a little bit about the Free Speech Club itself. What are the goals of the Free Speech Club? What is it, and why are you involved with it?
Yeah, so we started about 3 years ago, and we started on the UBC campus. And our goal initially was mostly social. We wanted to connect with other people who liked freedom, liked free speech. And we started doing pub nights. And eventually, someone had the idea of inviting this somewhat unknown professor named Jordan Peterson at the time. And we did that, and we started doing lectures with various speakers, and eventually it just kind of blew up into this thing where other students from other universities wanted to get involved and wanted to figure out how to do it. And eventually we invited, I think, Jordan Peterson back 5 times. We had Stephen Hicks, we had Ben Shapiro last year, and we basically created this mandate to bring interesting events to campuses. So, you know, Andy sort of wasn't particularly, you know, a random choice. We thought that it would be neat to do a lecture series on radicalism, both on the left and the right. And we thought, well, you know, Andy Ngo kind of has an interesting first case, you know, past on this. So we invited him. We wanted the topic to be on Antifa violence. And honestly, to our surprise, we didn't expect it to turn out to get canceled. I mean, like I said, we've had Ben Shapiro, we've had more controversial speakers, I would imagine, than Andy Ngo. I mean, this is a gay Vietnamese, center-right, you know, soft-spoken, articulate guy. He's not really super radical. So, you know, this was the run-of-the-mill event for us. We had a budget, we booked him, we had a space, we had a contract executed with UBC, as we always do, because that's just business as usual. UBC has always been fairly reasonable with us. They might inflate security here and there, but overall, we sort of had a formula down on how to do these events. And then, you know, right before Christmas, we get this call. And it was a call that I somewhat expected, which is UBC always gives you a call and says, look, you got to bring 3 or 4 security guards on, and here we're going to charge you $1 million for it. But to my surprise and to the surprise of the Justice Center and everybody involved, they called me and said, look, we can't handle Antifa. They're too violent. We've gotten threats. We don't know what to do. So we think it is the best idea to just cancel it. The executive itself made this decision, and they just outright canceled it. And anyone who understands how the law works with public venues understands that this is a really big deal. So, you know, we sort of found a bit of a hill to die on here. And we said, look, you can't just do that. Number one, it's a breach of contract, and that's a whole other issue. But number two, you have a school that boasts quite publicly about the fact that they have an academic freedom mandate, which they just violated. And why did they violate it? They said, well, we believe in free speech, but health and safety of students should come first. which is a bit of a cop out because, anybody could call in and make a threat over anything. Call that the heckler's veto. So that's the second part. And the third part is that we have a charter of rights that says, look, you got to have free expression. And I know the radical left likes to say, well, that only relates to the government. The government can't stifle your speech. What people need to understand is that a public body, like a school that gets taxpayer dollars, is by proxy part of the government. It's a public venue. It's like the Vancouver Public Library that tried to cancel Meghan Murphy. They don't have the right to do that. So we said, look, we spoke to the Justice Center, who we've worked very close with, and said, you got to reinstate the event. We honestly didn't expect them to respond to that, and they didn't. So we are filing to take this to court.
So let me get this straight. UBC pulled the plug on this event because out of fear of some sort of Antifa retaliation. Did they say that they got credible threats? And I mean, is there any proof that they actually had any threats against the event?
Yeah. So I said, look, if there are threats that you guys got, can we know what they are? As an organization, I have to justify this to our consumers and to our speakers, and it's a reputation thing. And they could not give me a specific threat. That being said, I mean, if you look at Twitter and our event page and everything, there were definitely people making threats. But, some random profile on Facebook that could be in God knows where shouldn't have that sort of power. So I think they're basing it off of either two things. They're either basing it off of the fact that Jen Smith was on campus and that had a lot of protests, and then Ricardo Deschentes was on campus and that had a lot of protests. Neither one of those events were even ours, but there was a retaliation to that. And I think the UBC security didn't do a good job at securing everything, mostly because UBC security isn't really allowed to do hands-on. So that kind of created a PR nightmare for them. And the second part is that when they had Jen Smith speak at UBC, it led to UBC getting kicked out of the Pride Parade. And the Pride Society said, well, don't platform bigots. They did the same thing to the Vancouver Public Library. They said, you're not allowed to march in a Pride Parade because you platformed Meghan Murphy and Jen Smith. So obviously, again, what the Pride Society doesn't understand is that they don't have a choice. But I think UBC now is doing this PR thing where they want to repair what they deem as a damaged reputation. So it could be either one of the two. Maybe they legitimately don't know how to secure the venues and they're scared, or they want to get better publicity. Either way, they're in the wrong. If you don't know how to secure the venue, why was security not an option? I spoke to the chief risk officer. I said, look, we've done this for 3 years. You know us. You always come to us. I mean, we had Ben Shapiro. We spent like 20 grand in security for Ben Shapiro. So we have that money. So why is security not an option? Let's get an army of security dogs. Let's get a K9 unit. Let's do the whole 9 yards, man. But they said that isn't even an option this time. And to us and to the Justice Center, that sort of spelled out something different. We think there's something else going on. Especially because it was the executive that made this decision. It's not like they consulted with police or anything.
Well, it's clearly a violation of your free speech and Andy's free speech. So maybe let's get into the legal action that you want to take against UBC. Tell us about how you came up with that idea and where you are at in the process of suing the University of British Columbia.
Well, the reason why I came up was this. We couldn't just walk away from this. And the reason for that is that if we walk away from this, it creates a precedent that not only emboldens domestic terrorists, but at the same time makes it infinitely more impossible for us to host events. I mean, like you said, you've been to our events before. I was told that if we were to bring back someone like Jordan Peterson, maybe that wouldn't be acceptable now. So what's happening is essentially you're saying, well, you can't host an event again. I said, well, you're telling me our own school won't allow us to host events. We pay tuition and everything, right? And they said, look, just don't bring anyone controversial. Don't bring anyone that offends and upsets Antifa, and we're all good. So, it's that classic racket thing. Just give us your money and everything will be hunky-dory. So to us, like I said before, this is a bit of a hill that we choose to die on if need be, because it's so important. And we said, look, we're prepared to take this to the Supreme Court, which looks like that's what's going to happen now. And the Justice Center has completely endorsed us, and they are representing us. So we, at this point, are in a bit of a standstill in terms of hosting more events, because the school, well, the rental department won't even answer our emails anymore. But the school itself has now emboldened terrorists. And again, their justification was, look, if we cancel your events for a while, maybe Antifa will go away, which is the stupidest thing ever, because that's not what happens when you negotiate with terrorists. They stay. That's why that's a thing. So, look, who do we go after? We can't go after people who are wearing masks and are anonymous. We have to go after institutions that are meant to uphold free speech. So the legal ramifications are threefold. Like I said before, it's a breach of contract, which will lead to damages. It's a breach of their own mandate. If you're a student and you sign up, you have certain rights on campus, and then it becomes a charter issue. So, the silver lining in all of this is that, number one, we believe we will win. And number two, if and when we win, that'll lead to a legal precedent that could eventually encompass every Canadian campus in Canada.
Yes. This is a very, very important case. As you said, it's potentially a precedent setter. Very, very crucial that this moves forward. And I mean, especially in universities, which are supposed to be the breeding ground of debate. This is supposed to be an environment where opposing opinions should be challenged, and there should be room for debate. So the fact that this is now moving into a shut it down type of scenario, I mean, what does this say about the current state of free speech in Canada? Where is it going, and can we get it back to the way it used to be?
Well, we're in a culture war, right? And I think one of the issues is that our side is playing by different rules versus their side. Their side, and when I talk about they, I don't mean liberals. I don't mean, people who are left of center, but many of them are perfectly reasonable, or most. I'm talking about the radical minority that wants to shift culture. And they're playing by the rules of, I will use violence if necessary to get my way. And we don't play by those rules. And this is the issue. We're playing a tennis match where the other side is using a flamethrower instead of a racket. So what do? I think the legal action is the best way to do things, because when we win, it's not like Antifa could go and complain to the school anymore, because the school could just say, hey, you know what? Our hands are clean. We got sued and it's a legal precedent. Go complain to the courts. So I'm hopeful that the legal system will get this back on track, but we have to collectively as a society take a stand against this idea that, and the irony of shutting down an event on Antifa violence by using Antifa I mean, it's just, the irony is insane. And that's why, this story's gotten a lot of traction, and the media has been surprisingly quite positive towards us. And I think maybe it's because Andy's a journalist. And I think on some level, a lot of these journalists that I've spoken to, even mainstream CBC journalists, are saying, look, we might not agree with this politics and everything, but it is such a slippery slope. Yeah. What if this was the 1950s and this was a gay rights event that gets shut down because, fundamentalists are threatening, physical action? It's like, this is how these things go. It's not just about Andy. It's about the precedent that it sets. And, in terms of where this all goes, I think the majority of society agrees with us. I think the laymen agree with us. It's just people don't have that much time to devote to this stuff. Like you and me, we're junkies, right? This is our life. This is what we're all about. But most normal people don't have that time. And I think another silver lining here is that this story has blown up so much that a lot of people are beginning to say, hey, you know what? Enough's enough on this violent stuff. Enough's enough on wearing masks and threatening people and causing damage. Like, at some point, you've won the culture war when even the laymen are drawing a line and saying, enough's enough. We're not going to have that anymore.
Yes.
So,
yep.
I'm optimistic.
Well, I'm glad for that, because I agree. I think people are starting to recognize that there is a problem here. And if we have something like an institution like UBC kowtowing to, like you said, what amounts to domestic terrorism here, kowtowing to the demands of these violent thugs, that really says a lot moving forward, which is why this case, which could be precedent setting, is so important. I know you don't have a crystal ball. It's tough to tell, how long this might be drawn out, but do you have a general idea of how long these types of things may take to resolve?
Well, we're taking it to the top.
Yeah.
So if it's going to the Supreme Court, it's going to take a while. I was told we could get a hearing at the end of the year, maybe, if we move quick. That's, these things don't move quick. If this was some small claims court thing, it would be quicker. But we're taking this to the top. It's the Supreme Court, and it's going to take time, which sucks because I had a lineup of speakers that I wanted to bring. And a lot of people are saying, well, look, why don't you just bring them anyways and bring them to the library instead of UBC? You can't really do any of that now because UBC has set this precedent saying, we found a loophole where we can cancel if people threaten to blow the place up. So the library will just do the same. SFU did the same with Megan Murphy a little while back, and she managed to salvage it. So I'm not into the idea of retreating, the idea of saying, we have a lot of people who message us and say, hey, I own this bar, do the event at this bar or something. And I love getting that support. But at the same time, I don't believe we should be retreating to the underground. I want this event, when we win, it is going to be 10 times bigger. Even if there aren't people or anything, I want to make it huge. And I want it to be in the center of the social justice area on UBC. I want it to be right in their face to show that we have freedom and they can't take that away from us. We're not going to retreat anywhere.
I agree 100%. I mean, this is how you deal with bullies. If you just let them walk all over you, it's going to continue to happen, and they're going to think that that's something that is okay, which it absolutely isn't. So I really, really hope that people are going to get behind this case. Is there any way that the viewers can get involved and support the Free Speech Club in this fight? I mean, this is probably going to be an expensive legal battle. Are people able to donate, or where can they go in order to get involved with this incredibly important, potentially precedent-setting case?
Yeah, so there's two places. Number one, you can go to the Justice Center online. I can give you some links. Or you can go to our website, www.freespeechclub.com, or our YouTube channel, which is just The Free Speech Club. We have tons of videos on there. You can find links to PayPal, which help us, and then you can also find donation links to the Justice Center, which helps them with their own legal fees because they do represent us pro bono. So whatever you can do, this is going to be a long, hard-fought battle, but at the end of it, it could be something that really changes the fabric of Canadian campuses. If we win, we're not going to have any more issues on campus. We're not going to have this notion of people wearing, masks and causing violence. That's just not going to be a thing anymore. And that's why this case is so important. So any support is absolutely fabulous.
Yes, it's such an important fight to win, especially at this stage of the game moving forward when it comes to free speech in Canada. So I strongly encourage the viewers of this video to check the links in the description. Get involved in this case in any way you can, whether it be donating a few bucks, 5, 10, 20, or even just sending them messages of support. Get involved with the Free Speech Club and help them, because as I said, this is a huge case moving forward. I really hope that you guys win. I think you will. And as you said, this is going to potentially change the course of how these types of events are carried out in the near future, which, as I said, when it comes to universities, it's of the utmost importance that these kids be able to hear every side to all of these world-shaping events. So again, great job not backing down from the bullies. So what are your links? I know you have a Twitter. If people want to actually learn directly from you, how can they follow you?
Yep. So I'm at Angelo Isidorou, which is a big, hard Greek name, but it's ANGELO ISIDOROU. And then we're also at the FS Club on Twitter. And then we're also on Facebook at the Free Speech Club.
Perfect. All right. Well, again, I strongly encourage people to check out those links. They will be located in the description below. Angelo, once again, great work, man, and keep it up. And thanks for talking to us today.
I appreciate it, Dan.
We all want truth.
will set you free, free, free.